These giants, were they different races like we see races now, like Asian, black,
Mhm.
Caucasian, European? Like how do they look exactly?
Another good question.
Mm,
We have in Egypt, you see in the hieroglyphs, black giants. They're
mm,
clear as day. Their skin tone, they're painted black. They're painted not black, but they're painted brown, like my arm and you like your skin and my skin color, right?
yeah, yeah.
And you see that their servants are painted brown as well. So they
Mm,
have brown servants, but
mm,
they're these kings that are giants. They're actually very obviously brilliant and smart and intelligent because they're actually ruling and have people serving them. You see in the Sumerian culture, in the Akkadian and Babylonian text, and still under scrolls, you see giants as well, and you see that you can't tell what skin tone they are. Some appear to have more African features. Some of these beings appear to have even African type hair. Some appear to be a little bit more Arabian, by feature.
mm,
And then you also see in other parts of the world depictions of the giants that they left behind. Some of them were these giant, according to even the indigenous Native Americans, these giant, tall, white, red-haired giants. There was even a very well-known account in the Americas of the tribes battling against these tall, white, red-haired giants. So this giant thing that's happened on this planet, it wasn't just at one location; it was everywhere, and it was all different kind of colors and races. We have right there, just in those three accounts, we have what looks like to some people their description is white.
mm.
Another description is black. Another description is more olive. You know what I'm saying? So there's a mixture here.
Right, right. What so when we see something like the Incredible Hulk, that's not far fetched.
Oh no, I don't think it's far fetched at all. In terms of now, of course, they've added a thing where he's absorbing gamma rays and it's genetically modifying him in real time. Now, obviously, that's science fiction, but these beings reportedly were that strong. Like they really were that strong. Some of these big, massive blocks and things that got moved around, they didn't need anti gravity. They can just pick them up and move them.
Yeah.
Now think about this. Let's look at the physics of a planet. Okay, so in on this Earth, we grew up under this gravity net, so it set a certain type level of strength to our bones and our structure, right, as our avatar body. Now, if we were to travel to a planet or a moon that was smaller than Earth, the smaller it is, the stronger we are. Okay,
Mm,
and the smaller it is, the most likely the bigger we are to any inhabitants that would be on that planet. Now, the Anunnaki supposedly came from a planet that was 4 to 6 times larger than Earth, which would explain their giant size. If we go to Mars, for example, Mars is much smaller than Earth. We already know that based on Mars gravity, we would, me and you today, without lifting any weights, would be able to pick up a small car.
mm,
We would be able to dunk on a 15-foot basketball hoop. You know what I'm
mm,
saying? We would look like Superman up there.
mm,
Okay.
mm,
Now, just like the Anunnaki, when they came here and started mating, the first, I guess, generation would be strong still. But by the time that first generation made it again and had a second generation, they would become weaker and smaller. And by the third generation, weaker and smaller. By the fourth generation, weaker and smaller until it normalizes out. The
mm.
same thing here as well. You know what I'm saying? This is my own collection right here. You're looking at my credenza, and to prove it, I have a picture of me and my son inside the credenza, so I don't get the crazy people. You know what I'm saying? You got to outsmart these clowns sometimes. So you see a picture of me inside my credenza with my son right there. But on the left, you see a giant Paracas skull, and on the right, you see a human skull. This is not from skull binding. Okay. It says here, this is my collection at home. You can clearly see that the Paracas skull has almost one-third more brain volume and a much larger jawbone than the modern human. These were giants. You could not get more brain volume from skull binding, as some would believe. If you skull bind, which did happen in the past, you actually shrink your brain for capacity, or the skull. So your brain actually shrinks into the size of the skull. It doesn't expand Binding makes it smaller, not wider. Now, these people who are binding were trying to mimic the gods, people who they thought were gods, because they were like gods with these big heads and all this knowledge. But binding just was a symbolism. The people who had the skull like you see right here, these are some giants with super smarts and high technology. So it's pretty incredible. Now, approximately 3,000 years old, this skull, and the initial DNA analysis of them has revealed that they may have not come from humans, but from a completely new species, according to Paracas Museum assistant director and researcher Brian Forster, who I'm going to see him in Peru in April on a tour that I'm doing down there. Good friend of mine. It's apparent, he said, here's the apparent quote from the geneticist who did the testing, and then it goes on in my report there, but it's actually on my Anunnaki history group. But what he was saying was they spent a couple $100,000 on this DNA testing from multiple sources, and the evidence came back non-human. Okay, so pretty interesting stuff. Now we have thousands of these skulls now, thousands. Okay, not a few, not 100, not a couple of anomalies, thousands of these giant skulls, and they're in a museum. And I'll be going live from the museum in April. I'm sorry, June, not April, June, from Peru. Okay, with Brian Forster. Here goes the heights and some of the feats that have been stated by witnesses over thousands of years. Present day modern human, which reaches an average height of about 6 feet tall. Then you have B, 15-foot human skeleton found in the southeast Turkey in the late 1950s in the Euphrates Valley during road construction. Many tombs containing giants were uncovered there. That's close to the Middle East. Then you have C, Maximus Thrax, Caesar of Rome, 235 to 238 AD. Okay, look at that. Look how big he was. D is Goliath, about 9 feet. Okay, yes, in Samuel 7:14, late 11th century. Then you have E, King Og, spoken of in Deuteronomy 3:11, whose iron bedstead was approximately 14 feet by 16 feet wide. King Og was about 12 feet tall. Then you have the FA, you have number, what's this? Who's this? 19 feet 6 inches, a human skeleton found in 1577 AD under an overturned oak tree in the canton of Lucerne. And you have G, well, you can't probably see the letters on your screen. I don't know if you can see them at the bottom there. But 23-foot tall skeleton found in 1456 AD beside a river in Valence, France. You have this other one here, H, which is 25 or so feet, 6 inches, I believe. Skeleton found in 1613 AD near the castle of Chatemont in France. And this was claimed to be nearly a complete find. In other words, they had all the parts of that body in H. And I, almost beyond comprehension or believability, was the find of 2 separate 36-foot human remains uncovered by the Carthaginians somewhere between 200 to 600 BC. And so these are just some accounts of giants that have been found, around the world and their sizes. So we know that these people got super massive at one point, or were super massive and then shrunk. Really is what it seems like. There's one more here in Egypt. This is one of the Egyptian temples. You can see this king and this pharaoh. And you can see the human beings coming to worship and serve. You can see how the size they are compared to the size of this guy. This guy is massive.
Huge, yeah.
Yeah. If he stands up, I mean, these people are below his kneecap. This is, again, Gilgamesh. So you can see the average height of a human versus the average height of this guy. And in the upper right corner, you see an Anunnaki Sumerian cylinder scroll depicting the size of one of these Anunnaki people. He's actually teaching these human beings anti-gravity techniques with this apparatus. That disc you see there, that round disc with those lines on it, that's not a disc with lines on it. That's a frequency. And it's a cymatic frequency, a particular frequency that you can get when you put sand on a plate and put a speaker beneath it. Once you obtain that right frequency, you can make that exact pattern. You can see the table, the human being that has his hand on the leg of the table, he's lifting it from that side with one arm, a stone table. And this is the same exact apparatus at the at the Coral Castle in Miami, Florida, in Coral Gables. It's the same exact setup with this type of a tripod the guy has. He had a magnetic thing at the top, and he had this frequency coming out of it that would help him levitate gigantic coral blocks. The guy was only 4'11". He weighed 110 pounds or something. His name was Edward Leedskalnin, and he claimed to have unlocked the mystery of building pyramids just like the ancient Egyptians. And he built this megalithic, this is in modern times, he built this megalithic structure in Miami called the Coral Castle, a place that people can go without having to use a passport and go explore a megalithic site. So that's what I have for you today. Let me stop sharing my screen. So this is, can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay. This is Gilgamesh, right? This is a famous inscription. It's carved into a lot of different places. This is the Epic of Gilgamesh on the other side, which is the actual cuneiform tablets that make up the full epic, which is a massive tome of information. It's the full story of Noah's Ark. Now, he's not Noah. He goes to meet Zasudra, who's actually Noah in the Bible. And he goes on a quest to search for this guy. He goes for a quest. And what's interesting about this story, Rich, it's going to blow you away. Enlil sends him on this mission, okay? That's Enki's brother. These are Anunnaki people. And he sends him on this mission, and he wants a companion to go with him because he's going to be lonely. So they fashion him a companion. In other words, they make him a companion to go along with him. It's a guy. But the guy, when you analyze how he moves, how he talks and everything, you realize that this is an artificial being. It's like a cyborg or a R2D2 type thing or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
This is crazy. Like they made him somebody to go keep him company, an artificially intelligent being to go keep him company. Wild stuff. Pretty interesting stuff. But this guy was massive. You can see this lion in his arms.
Yeah,
This
look
is
at
one of
that.
the-
Look at that line. Wow.
Yeah. Now the guy was super massive. He would get into battles and brawls and fights along the way. Nobody could touch this guy. This guy was massive. Here goes an Egyptian god king. You can see how big he is. Look at the people.
Yeah.
He has a whole, what do you have, about 4 or 5 people there. You know, he's holding their braids in his hand, and he's got the hammer. He's like, look, you guys are going to bow to me, do what I tell you to do. All right. That's in Egypt. That's actually at this image right here. Let me see. This one here is from Abu Simbel, Temple Abu Simbel. So if you travel to Abu Simbel, which I'll be going to again in October, I will show everyone who comes with me this depiction right here of this giant. Now, this is, you know, you have Pharaoh Akhenaten, and he had a big skull, but this is his daughter. Okay, this is just one of his daughters. All of his daughters had skulls like this. And this was the actual shape of their skulls. Now, these skulls are not from skull binding. They're like this because they actually grew like this. They have more brain mass than a normal human being. Akhenaten had more brain mass than a normal human being. So did his wife, and so did his son, King Tut. This is crazy stuff. Now, if you look at even King Tut's grandfather, Tutmos III, and his grandmother, Queen Ti, they also had big heads as well. So this is pretty interesting stuff. Now, King Tutmos and Queen Ti, they were Black Africans. In other words, they were me and your color exactly. And she had a huge afro. You know, Tut was black. But it's just really amazing that they had these heads. They had these incredible size heads. His sisters had these incredible size heads as well. Pretty interesting stuff. This is that verse that I told you from the Bible. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, who come of the giants. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. You know what I'm saying? They're saying, man, we were like nothing to these people. We were tiny.
Well, first of all, somebody asked earlier. Let me ask this. Somebody said, if they were so big, how did they mate with humans if they're so big?
Good question. Yeah. If you look at some of the accounts, even in the biblical text, the women died.
Wow.
That's one answer. It wasn't too good for the women. In a lot of cases, they didn't live. You know what I'm saying? So that was a big problem. Now, obviously, we know women can handle. They can give birth. They can have a whole doggone baby come out. So they have the capability of stretching pretty far, but it was in some accounts, very painful.
Mm.
And in some accounts, the women did die.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. How many floods were there that completely wiped out civilization from your knowledge?
That's a good question. Okay. Because a lot of people are under the assumption that there was only one flood.
Right. And there was more.
There was more than one flood. And now we know this because we can look at the geology of the earth, and we can check out the rock strata, and we can actually see the different layers. And these different layers of strata actually tell us a history. And we can go get the ice core samples, which we've already done. And the ice core samples, we take this gigantic drill, and you send this core down, a hollow core, and when you pull it out, you pull up all the ice, and every layer that comes up is like so many hundreds of years. And then you take that ice and you slice it up, and you take the same core from the geology, and you take that dirt and that mud and that rock, and you take it out the same exact way, and you slice it up into pieces, and then you analyze it in a laboratory. And we can get a lot of data from this. So we find that there was at least 4 floods that we know of, okay, going back hundreds of thousands of years up until what looks like the last one was maybe around 36,000 years ago, the massive one, which ironically, how old are the emerald tablets? 36,000 years old, according to the people that back this thing. So pretty interesting. The other thing is on the ice core data and the strata data, you can look at it and see that through a scientific analysis, not only were there floods, but they can even detect all the global warming periods. So global warming is not from cows farting and people using hairspray cans and your gas, your emissions from your car. Have human beings contributed to carbon dioxide? Yes. But the majority of this warming is, now we see from actual geological evidence, it's a natural cycle that occurs around every 4,200 years. Okay. And this isn't even the warmest warming period. And it seems that every time we come out of this ice period into a warming period, that's when, these giants seem to reappear again. It's pretty crazy stuff, man.
By Compendium of the Emerald Tablets by Billy Carson.